So, my friends, I want to get into Q&A as quick as I can, but I also want to make sure that today you understand the connection between trust and anxiety. And trust is such a, I mean, it's such a difficult, well, most of the time, because we're in such a cycle of anxiousness. It's such a difficult thing to not only understand, but to also reach. And I want everybody to know out there a couple of things related to trust, okay? And of course, if you're writing these down, even better, right? It's always good to take some notes and such. But I built trust in the ever-changing processes of life, because life is always changing, by recognizing that there were times where it was necessary for me to talk about anxiety, and there were times where it wasn't necessary at all. And what's really interesting is that our minds and our bodies and our emotions make us feel like we have to talk about anxiety, and it has to be at the forefront of everything we do. So what tends to happen in an anxiety sufferer's life, and it could be any kind of disorder, but in an anxiety sufferer's life, is they go about their day looking constantly to check in with this anxiety identity to see if what they're doing is okay and if it's safe enough, or if they're about to say something to someone, they consciously or unconsciously check into themselves and say, hey, is it okay to say this? And many times what tends to happen through this checking in process is less trust is built. There's no trust, there's no congruence between the child and the adult mind, the subconscious and the conscious mind. And we find ourselves tiptoeing through life, right? And what happens when we feel like anxiety is always at the forefront of our lives and it's a part of our identity is we start to suppress more and more stuff, right? As if we haven't repressed enough, right? As if we haven't repressed our past traumas, as if we haven't repressed all sorts of hatred for ourselves and others, and unforgivenesses and angers and blames and shames, as if we haven't suppressed and repressed enough of that stuff, right? Now, when we check in and we're told through our identity, anxiety identity, that it's not okay to be someone else, we suppress even more. And so as we continue tiptoeing through life, looking, and this is a crucial part to understand, looking to prevent things from happening, we rarely ever give ourselves the chance to truly live in the present moment, because we're always looking to prevent things from happening. We look to prevent a disease, an illness. We look to prevent criticism from others. We look to prevent an anxiety symptom by doing things in the hopes of the symptom not arising. And with this idea of prevent, we're stuck in comfort zones, my friends, and we never build trust. These comfort zones, let me tell you, has everything to do with mental and ways of thinking comfort zones, right? Emotional, physiological, imaginative, and environmental behaviors. These are all comfort zones. I was working with somebody lately, and I helped them recognize that suffering was a comfort zone. Imagine that. Suffering is a comfort zone. And since suffering has been such a comfort zone, when somebody experiences a sense of inner peace or happiness or joy, it's outside their comfort zone, and what they consciously and unconsciously do is they sabotage that moment, and they go back to what's familiar, right? They go back to what's familiar, and familiar is suffering, and anxiety is suffering. So they connect with anxiety. They believe it's who they are rather than things that they're just doing. An anxiety sufferer will never tell you that they're doing things that are causing their anxiety. They'll always make you believe that anxiety is a part of who they are, and they'll have to cope with this forever. And that is a belief system, right? And when we think about belief systems, these belief systems can live with a person their entire lives. So if suffering is a comfort zone, we need to understand that anytime we find ourselves outside of our comfort zone, there's a sense of vulnerability, there's a sense of discomfort. And what do people do when they're uncomfortable? Right? The moment they're uncomfortable, what do? Right? They go back to their comfort zones. They go back to a comfort zone, whether it's good or bad for them. As long as it's familiar, that's enough. Because familiarity equals certainty. If I'm familiar in this comfort zone, then it gives me a sense of certainty. And therefore, through my adult mind, I want things to change. I want to become someone different. I want to experience life as a whole. I want to be grateful. I want to do all these things that I'm learning. That's what my adult mind. But the adult mind is only about 5% of what you do throughout the day and how you think. That the adult mind is only 5%, and we don't even utilize that 5%. Can we strengthen the adult mind to overtake the beliefs of the child mind? Absolutely. But do we? We don't. Because of familiarity, because of safety, because of certainty. What does this mean? Well, each and every one of us is going to take a different meaning from what I just shared. So whether it's Adita or Deb or Melissa, Joshua, I want you to comment below and tell me what you just realized. What kind of clarity you just gained. Because what's the point of listening to something if you're not going to take the time to investigate a little bit further the very thing that you just realized, the very insight that you just gained. So what insight did you just gain about yourself? What did you just realize about yourself and the way you're treating yourself and going about your life? Understand this. And this was humongous for me in my healing journey and moving towards trust. You can learn a lot about yourself and your anxiety by interpreting all of it from the outside rather than from the inside. Because here's the problem. We're perceiving everything based on the belief systems that we've taken on from childhood onwards. That's where our perceptions are coming from. That's why we continue to live in fear. But when we take a few moments and we step back for a moment and we say, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to practice it because today is going to be the worst I'm ever at it. Remember, anything that you begin, you're going to be the worst at it today in the beginning stages. So you begin interpreting what's taking place within you and what's taking place outside of you from the outside. It's almost like a camera looking in, and you start to go, my God, I never realized I do that in that situation. I never realized that I could actually interpret this challenge this way. And so it's very necessary to begin perceiving yourself and the challenges that you're going through from the outside rather than the inside. And when it does come to trust, Monique says she's putting a lot of limitations on herself, right? We're the ones unintentionally closing the door to our freedom, Zoe says. That's beautifully put. It's all in our hands only. All comes down to self-control. Cheryl, great to see you, by the way. Jody said, that makes sense. Trust in yourself, Karen says. And when you go through these sessions, it's not about saying, Dennis, I realize what you're telling me and I realize how far I am from that, and then continuing the blame game or the shame game, right? Forget that stuff. Put that stuff aside and just come from a place of learning, right? Because you've already been hard enough on yourself for all these years. You don't even realize it, right? The recognition of how hard you are on yourself is like 5 to 10%. You don't even realize the other 90%. You've been so hard on yourself. It's ridiculous. For what reason? For what reason? Right? Because a system within you that's geared towards your survival is telling you to do so? No. Right? And so you have to ask yourself, who's running the ship? Who's really running the ship? Are my feelings dictating everything? Because in the latest book, F. Coping, Start Healing, remember there's a very important lesson. Don't believe everything you feel. Don't believe everything you feel. Hey, I got a feeling. Okay, great. You have about 1 trillion other options in terms of how to interpret either a bodily symptom or an external challenge. It doesn't matter. Don't believe everything you feel. So there I was driving, right? Number of years ago, there I was driving. Melissa recognizes her negative self-talk. Good, that's a great starting point. It really is. And there's no reason to beat yourself up even more because you just realized it, right? And so I was driving a number of years ago. And I think Leo Messi, I believe it was Leo Messi, who mentioned that it took him 20 years to become an overnight success. Right? It took him 20 years to become an overnight success. I'm totally, it's not the real quote, but something along those lines. And the same kind of thing happened to me, where I was going through months and months and months of recognizing some of my patterns and doing a lot of the inner work that I needed to for myself. And then I woke up in the morning, symptoms were there, anxiety symptoms were there, the bodily symptoms were there, the lump in the throat was there, the chest tightness was there, the headache was there, the dizziness was there, the depersonalization was there, the tingly feelings in my hands were there, and I kept going. I got in my car, started driving to work. And as I was driving, I realized something that was tremendous, and it was really a massive stride in the right direction. I realized that for the first time, I detached from attaching to all those uncomfortable sensations, as well as the catastrophic thoughts that were running in my head. And for the first time, I found myself, and I remember this very vividly, it felt like a new door was opening up for me. It was like this new door opening up, and there was this shiny white light, and it was almost telling me to just go towards that door and go through that door. And I pulled my car over, and I realized that for the first time, I was detaching from what I always attached to, right? And it was a tremendous moment where all the inner work showed up in one moment. And for a long period of time, I was beating myself up over feeling the same way I always did. Oh my God, this is never going to go away, yada, 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 more pressure, more anxiety. And then with that recognition, after pulling my car aside, I went back on the road and I continued driving. And like I mentioned, it felt like I was walking a dog, but not feeding the dog. And what happens when you don't feed the dog? The dog dies, right? And so with that idea, I felt a tremendous amount of trust. And I also felt like there was a team effort taking place within me at that point. It was almost like there was a shift between my feelings overtaking all my perceptions and what I was doing and how I saw myself in life, to this side of me that really was never a part of the journey until that moment. Right? And I would call it the adult mind. And it was a beautiful thing. As I went through the entire day, it was almost like I had the permission, the inner permission, to become more and more engaged in what was taking place in my outside world, rather than reverting to safety, which I had for such a long time, the safety of my suffering. Right? And no longer did I revert back to the safety of my suffering. I found myself feeling more courageous and giving myself the permission I needed to begin listening to what other people were saying rather than checking in to see how I was feeling. That was a big one. And so I realized that I was looking at things at that point and onwards, and I realized that things were colorful. Because when I was suffering from chronic anxiety, there were no colors. There were no colors. There were no sounds that I was conscious of, right? There were no sounds. Everything was unconscious. What sounds? I was touching things, but I wasn't really feeling those things, right? Emotionally, I was numb. I was just basically numb going through the day. There was no emotions. There was no, there were no feelings there towards anybody or goals that I wanted to achieve. So I was a numb man walking. There was all these things related to anxiety. And I found myself opening myself up to a world that I really didn't open myself up to for so long. And what do I attribute that to? I'll tell you, right? I'll tell you what I attributed that to. I attributed that to, first, becoming aware of what I was unaware of. My God, like years were passing by. My life was passing me by. My kid was growing up and I wasn't a part of it. I was physically there, right? But life was passing me by, and it came to my understanding that if I continued on that same path, that I wasn't going to have a life, right? There wasn't some miraculous thing that was going to happen that was going to turn everything around. No, the full responsibility was mine, but I had to approach it in a very compassionate and long-term focused way. Michael, good to see you. And so I became aware of what I was unaware of. And I stopped seeking certainty. I got so sick of the norm. I got so sick of expecting what the next day was going to be like. I got so sick and tired of unconsciously looking for something that I wasn't receiving, which was love. And I was looking for love and connection from the outside, and many times I was doing it through my anxiety and my injuries and my sickness. And the moment I felt the love and the hugs from others, my unconscious said, see, I told you it's the way to get the love and connection that you crave. And so I was sick of that. I was sick of people being sympathetic towards me. And could you say that there was a certain amount of anger towards living that way? Absolutely. I believe anger is a great motivator. Anger can be a fantastic motivator, right? So can regret. So I went basically from a place of certainty to recognizing that there were some altered state works that needed to be done. Because CBT, as powerful and as valuable as it is for the healing journey, can only bring you so far. I realized that in order for me to communicate with the inner child, my subconscious mind, and to be able to change my core beliefs at the deepest levels, I had to relax. I had to relax. I had to relax my mind. I had to learn how to relax my body. I had to learn how to detach from my feelings and emotions. I needed to make peace with silence. I needed to do two things: receive and release. These, my friends, are two areas that need to be a part of every single day of your healing journey. Receive in terms of meditation and receiving the insights that you need, receiving the peace that you need, receiving the feeling of being connected to the world that you need, and that comes through meditation where you're receiving. But then I also needed the releasing. When I say releasing, I'm talking about reframing. Go on YouTube, you're doing the negative energy reframe. You're doing the emotional reframing. Through my book, F Coping, Start Healing, you'll learn about it. Through the Inner Circle program on theanxietyguy.com, you'll do it every single week. So, receive, release. Receive, release. Right? And so, it's not about just blissing out and temporarily placing a band-aid on the very things we don't want to show up within us. That's not it. Right? Meditation will get you to a place of receiving. Reframing will get you to a place of releasing. So, with that said, I understood that I needed to understand my inner child more, number one. I needed to become compassionate towards the thing I was trying to stuff aside and run away from, number two. I needed to become more self-loving towards myself, number three. These are three very important things, right? I'll ask everybody here, Christopher, Karen, Adita, Anissa, Sophie, are you coming from a place of understanding towards the things you're hoping aren't showing up in your inner world? Number one. Do you feel a sense of compassion towards your symptoms or the intrusive thoughts or anything else that you're currently dealing with? Number two. And do you feel a deep sense of self-love and being cared for? Number three. And so I found congruence between the child mind and adult mind. I found momentum showing up, right? Positive momentum. I found myself no longer on a hamster wheel, right? Going in circles. I found myself being on a path that I didn't know what the future would hold. And many times when people don't know what the future holds, they don't stay on that path. They go back and revert back to the comforts of suffering, okay? And I also recognized in my own days, I was always looking for moments to become more offended. Why? Why was I going about every single day looking for situations that would offend me? Why? You know why? Because there was a volcano within me. There was lava. And there was no opportunity for this energy to discharge. So if I felt offended by somebody, there would be a brief moment there where I could discharge some of the energy that was building up within me and the suppressed emotions that I was holding in my body. Right? If you hold enough suppressed emotions in your body, you will begin to feel it. You will begin to think it. You will begin to perceive it. Your entire perceptual filters begin to shift based on how you feel, right? And if you think about it, my friends, if you continue to look to exert a high amount of control over your emotions, right? If you're looking for that constant control over your emotions and every other aspect of your life, then what's going to happen is you're going to eat up all the willpower that you need, and you'll be investing your energy into places that you don't need to, and therefore your healing will suffer. Control is really an enemy. It really is. Control is one of the biggest enemies. Right? Control leads to overthinking, and overthinking is the enemy. And so when we recognize that we're over-controlling, we can do something about it. Right? Because what is looking to gain all this control over every aspect of your life doing to you? Ask yourself that question. What's it doing for me? Where is it leading me? Where is it taking me? Is it leading me towards a place where I feel like I'm trusting in the changes of life? Right? I mean, do you know how afraid I was of turning 40? Right? When I was like, a lot younger. I was afraid. Right? I was trying to control. I wanted the certainty. Turning 40, woo! Uncertainty there, old man, right? But I can't wait till I'm 60 now. I can't wait till I'm 80. I can't wait till I'm 100. Right? I can't wait for the uncertainty to show up today and tomorrow. Can you imagine living in that kind of freeing place on the inside? It's truly amazing. It's truly beautiful. And you no longer feel like you're living your life through these compartments. This is good. That's bad. I need to do this all the time, right? That's black. That's yellow. That's this. That's that, right? This must never happen to me. This must always happen to me, right? You're not a human being anymore. You're a controlling robot, right? So there is no good or bad. There is only life. When you approach life that way, you realize how much wasted time you've spent on things that you no longer have to spend that time on, right? So my friends, biggest insight that you gain from our little discussion here today on trust and how it connects to anxiety and some of the things that I discussed today. Like I mentioned, I will be doing those workshops through the anxietyguy.com very, very soon to kind of walk you through some practical steps. And of course, they're going to be longer than the hour that we have through these more so Q&A Facebook Live. So I'm looking forward to those. I'm excited. And Jody says, uncertainty scares the heck out of me. And it did for me. But the recognition of that fear, Jody, will take you in a direction of doing what you currently do. But to understand that this is a journey and all you have to do is just do the next thing. You don't have to focus on the outcome. You don't have to continue to focus on how far you have to go. All you have to do is just focus on the next thing that you need to do for yourself. When does the body forget? The body forgets when you replace those old zip files that you're holding in your body. When I talk about zip files, I'm talking about traumas and overwhelming experiences that made you freeze, right? Past experiences where you fought back or you ran away aren't deemed so much a trauma from the subconscious. But experiences where you felt overwhelmed, experiences where you felt a sense of losing it or not being able to speak up or anything like that, gets stored as information and as a zip file in your body. Now, if those zip files compound over time, then there's going to come a time where this subconscious will say, hey, is it time to resolve these? That's where bodily symptoms show up. That's where aches show up. That's where itchiness shows up. That's where numbness shows up. That's where all these symptoms that we all, some of us used to and some of us currently are dealing with. So the body begins to forget some of these traumas and begins to move itself in a whole nother pleasant place when those zip files are deleted and replaced. To delete those zip files, I would highly recommend that you begin on a daily basis learning techniques that are focused on a combination of imagery exercises and your body, emotional reframing exercises. If you're going through the End the Anxiety program, the gray room, the magic frame, and these can all be grouped together in under the same umbrella of reframing. Because what we're really doing is we're taking the old, okay, and we're seeing beyond how we've been seeing it for so long, right? And it's not logically, but it's more so at an emotional level. It's physiologically. So physiologically, through our bodies, we begin to interpret those past traumas differently. And so we delete that file and we place a new file in its place, one where we begin to receive what we wish we would have received at the time. I mean, I'll tell you a story. Someone a couple days ago working with this person, and they had a traumatic experience. They believed that they were carrying this stuff with them for years, and it was compounding and it was affecting their relationships and so on. And so I asked her one very important question, which is just the very basics of reframing. If you could go back and if you could redo the situation, what would you like to see, hear, and feel instead? My God, I'd love to see, my parents hugging in that moment. I'd love to see me joining them in that hug. I'd love to see, my dog yapping up and down and realizing, hey, what a beautiful day it was on January 12th, 1980, or whatever it was we were talking about. I'd love to hear, the kisses that were taking place in the moment. I'd love to hear my mom saying, I forgive you to my dad. I'd love to hear these things. I'd love to physically feel myself petting my pet. I'd love to physically feel myself hugging my parents. It's incredible how quickly a zip file related to a trauma can be replaced simply by a simple and long-lasting hug. You got a punching bag? All right. Put your dad's face on that punching bag, right? And go hug that punching bag until you feel, keyword, lighter. And when you feel lighter, you're doing something good for yourself. You know that those old zip files are being replaced with new files the more you feel lighter. Ask Sylvia. I don't know if Sylvia's here. Sylvia was here in the beginning. Sylvia, are you here? Right? Ask her. We won't go deep into her stuff, but ask her what response she had after we were doing a reframing process together, right? And more specifically, we were working with a physical object. We were working with the chair coaching, chair therapy. But again, reframing. Right? I don't think Sylvia's here. That's okay. Does that help, Mariana? Does that help? I hope that helps. My amygdala video is the best to understand. Okay, cool. Awesome. So if anybody is interested in this subject of zip files and trauma and how the emotional part or limbic brains attach to these experiences, then put amygdala, the anxiety guy, on YouTube. You could punch the punching bag, absolutely, right? Getting justice many times can lead to forgiveness, right? Many times people try to logically forgive themselves and other people when in fact all they really have to do is beat the living crap out of a punching bag with that person's face on the bag, right? I mean, can you imagine the emotional discharge that can happen in that moment? The sweating, the crying, the yawning, right? If that's what it takes, and that's what your heart says, your intuition says, then that's what you do. That's what needs to happen. Because when you say, I forgive you, person, many times it doesn't register deep enough. Okay? So just saying I forgive you many times isn't enough. Okay? Daryl's got 2 punching bags, not just one. Mariana, very welcome. I forgot I could pin these. Yay, let's pin them. Debbie, how are you? Dennis, how do we find trauma? You don't consciously find trauma. If it's not that obvious, I know it's there, but not sure if my memories are real, what the trauma is. Meditation. Meditation. Now, remember what we talked about today. We talked about receiving and releasing. Meditation leads to receiving. Meditation leads to you moving away from intellect and towards intuition. Intellect is this idea where we believe we have to think about every single problem, and we have to solve every single problem through our thinking mind. When in fact the heart, or the intuition, right, and this spontaneousness and this knowingness, rather than trying but knowing through the heart, knows. So through meditation, you will begin to understand what sort of things you're holding on to and what sort of pictures or movies that are still running in your system that are causing you to feel that way. To find trauma, you must not think about finding trauma. To find trauma, you have to get to a place, and you can work with someone. I mean, it's very important, guys, that you don't look to do this work on your own, okay, in the beginning stages. If you're doing the Inner Circle program, then, you know, you've got 16 weeks every single day of me guiding you. That's great. You need to be guided. You need to feel like someone who's been there can hold your hand and can show you and can gather the missing pieces of information that we need to gather in order for us to heal. The other thing we need to understand, Debbie and everybody else, is that when we think about trauma, the Inner Circle would be the best. Yeah, it's the #1 program for sure. When we think about trauma, we think that we have to relive our past trauma. But how long did it take you to become overwhelmed by that trauma? A few seconds. It only took a few seconds to be overwhelmed by that trauma. Then most likely you went into some kind of chemical protection and you stuffed it so deep within you that you have no access to it today until you do something else. So what's important to get from this idea of trauma is that you only need a brief couple seconds to look at a picture, to get what you wish you would have gotten at the time, and to move yourself forward in time, crying, emotionally discharging what needs to happen, right, in that moment. So you don't consciously find trauma, it finds you, right? The pictures, the images, the movies, the feelings find you through receiving, through meditation, and through being guided through reframing processes, Debbie, right? And I'm getting very, if this is kind of your first hit at some of this content, then it may be a little bit overwhelming. And if it is, I'm glad, because you started the process of understanding how to heal. Positive thinking alone won't do it. Amanda, you have all the support you need here, right? And you've got the love here, you've got the knowledge here, you've got the people here, right? And you can build from there, trust me, right? We can do this together, right? We're all doing it together. Right? Chemical protection, Jody, is when your nervous system gets overwhelmed by an experience. What it does, and let me just pin this, what the system does, what the nervous system does, is it shuts down a number of different processes and workings within the human body, like your digestive slows down, your memory slows down, and all these other things, your focus slows down, you become depersonalized and such, in the hopes of maintaining your survival. Okay, so chemical protection can come in the form of numbness many times, like a person can feel numb, right? And everybody's interpretation of that numbness can be a little bit different, but that chemical protection is there to protect you from being overwhelmed once again should a future external stimuli show up once again. So that's chemical protection. The feelings that you feel, the unsteadiness that you feel, the dizziness or the confusion, that can all be attributed to chemical protection. And if you think about, like, we can go really deep here, guys. If you look into shamanism, for example, the shamans will call it soul loss, right? They'll call it soul loss. And the reversal of that is soul retrieval. So in the shaman teachings, through different types of work, through different trance states, through relaxation, and through affirmations, and in many other different ways that shamans go about it, they begin to retrieve some of the parts of your soul that you lost over time, right? But you can go and do your own investigation there. But I hope that answered that question a little bit. When I feel dizzy, I pretend as if I smoked a joint. Absolutely. I mean, like we mentioned in this morning's post, right? When you can make friends with the very things that you've been running from or fearing, then what starts to happen is these symptoms start to subside, and you start to feel like you start to feel like you have a sense of your true unique self again, because you're no longer falling for these feelings. You're no longer allowing them to run your thinking and what you do and who you believe you are, right? So dizziness equals smoking a joint. Okay, whatever it takes to make peace with those feelings, right? Nanette says, oh my gosh, that's what it feels like, soul loss. Yes, that's what it feels like, soul loss, yeah. You've gained more in the short time being on my page and Facebook Lives than years of going to the ER. We've all been in the ER, Jody, so many times. Oh my God, the amount of pain, the amount of time, the amount of money and this and that being wasted. Oh goodness. Would I take it back and do it differently? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be here in front of you today. And soon you're going to understand as well how these experiences are necessary to learn from in order to really get to a place where you thought you'd never get to. Michael went twice in one day. Yeah, I know. It's common. Yeah. No one died in the ER, Joe. Yeah. The numbness causes me more anxiety. Yeah. Until you make peace with that numbness. Jody's shedding tears right now. Awesome. I love tears. I love tears. And those are the good kinds of tears, right? Awesome. Awesome. That's called lightness. That's called expression, right? I love when people cry. I do. I love criers, right? I mentioned in a podcast where I realized that tissues were the very worst invention ever, right? I wish whoever invented it never invented it. What's the purpose of tissues? Being more conscious of my breathing is really working. That's awesome, Joseph. And I bet with that comes a sense of slowing down your day as well, right? And when you slow down, you have an opportunity to think rather than replay, right? So you're literally thinking rather than just replaying the same thoughts of yesterday, right? So that's really good. I love it. I love it when people come to me and say, I'm working with my body. Right? I'm working with my body. I'm not just trying to be positive. I'm just not trying to replace thoughts with other thoughts, which is effective. But I'm working with my physiology to create changes in all the other aspects of me, right? And that makes me really excited when people focus on changes in their breathing, changes in their speed, changes in their posture, changes in their facial expressions, changes in their hand gestures, busting out power poses every day. If you go on YouTube and look up the video from Amy Cuddy, you'll realize how important power poses are. So things you do with your body, because this body will shift things at a psychological level faster than the psychological changes can shift things at a bodily level, right? So change your body and you'll change your mind, rather than looking to change your mind and then change your body, because that works a whole lot slower. I have fear of throwing up, and now I just say, what if I do? I'm just going to throw up, bring it on, and it never happens, Deb. What a great response. So I will make friends with the feelings of tense and needing to do something. Yes, and it's a bit of a process. It really is. This idea of making peace with the things that you're looking to stuff aside or run from. And I believe that at a deep level, your inner self-talk has a lot to do with that as well. Rather than, oh, I've got this feeling and, oh God, it's there again and it's going to overtake my whole life and such, rather than that kind of self-talk, you want to make sure that you recognize your self-talk and realize, hey, I really need to change this right now. I really need to stop being so hard on myself for feeling something in my body, because what I'm feeling in my body isn't something that I created. Isn't something I created. Can you imagine thinking about it that way? You didn't consciously create the feelings in your body, right? Those are the zip files we usually talk about, the experiences from the past, the beliefs, the personality you believe you are, all these things. But you didn't create the state that you're in right now. But you can alter the state you're in by recognizing some of the things that you're doing, right? And the ways you're looking at your symptoms that are causing you to continue to suffer. Right? What's a good one for dizziness and off? I missed that one. This comment's going quick. What's a good one for dizziness and off balance? Being drunk. Being drunk, right? Hey, I'm dizzy. Woo! Right? I'm 3 beers in. Right? Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to reinterpret it in a way where you feel neutral towards it rather than sensitized. Right? So 3 beers in, that one worked for me really well. Love the new book and listen to the podcast daily, John. That's awesome. Awesome. I'm very happy that the podcast is speaking to you. That's great. I'm just going to go ahead and sit in my lotus position for a second here. That's much better. It's always fun to be with you guys. It really is. It really is. Tea's almost done. Your dizziness went away through the inner circle. Mariana, that's awesome. That's why if you get the chance, theanxietyguy.com, look up inner circle in the menu items. It really is making a tremendous difference in a lot of people's lives just by going through that program. I mean, how can't it? Right? You got 16 weeks of daily guidance from me. I mean, it really, if you stick to it, you're going to heal. Can you ask a serious question? I love serious questions, right? Is it me making excuses to say I can't meditate because I have 5 children, or is it just near impossible? Yeah, I mean, it's more challenging. It's more challenging, that's for sure. I mean, obviously your time and energy is being invested in your kids and other things and such. I do believe we get to a point where we start thinking ourselves out of self-care because at a deep level we believe we don't deserve it, right? We're not worthy of caring for ourselves. I believe self-worth and self-respect has a lot to do with why people don't do what they need to do for themselves. And at the root of that comes the traumas that aren't resolved. But to answer your question, to begin receiving, like we talked about, receiving through meditation, receiving the insights, receiving the peace, receiving the clarity. I believe you can begin to make time, number one, and number two, depending on how old the kids are, of course, you can make it a family affair. You can literally, alter your entire household to make it kind of a Zen area. There doesn't, not area, but a Zen house. You can, you could place some incense in the corner there, and you can put some meditative music in the corner there that's playing all the time. And you can put up some nice colors here and there. And what's going to happen is your overall emotional state is going to shift, because at a deep level, you're always scanning your environment anyway. So when your scanning is occurring at an unconscious level and it picks up something that's peaceful or a scent like lavender or something like that, automatically you start to move yourself towards more self-care. There are ways, Nanette. There definitely are ways, and I really want you to start looking into those ways. I really want you to start realizing where those brief moments in time are, because when I was meditating, I do use sage, Karen. Yep. I remember meditating for 1 or 2 minutes per day, and it made a tremendous difference. You don't have to be sitting there for hours and hours. You can meditate for 2 minutes 3 times a day, and it'll make a massive difference in your life. So there are ways. But I wouldn't look at it in terms of making excuses, because when someone feels like they're making excuses, there's more inner blame and shame and such, and anger that shows up. And I don't want you guys to feel that way. Rather, I want you to understand that it's a self-worth, self-respect, self-love issue. All right? If you can't find the time and you haven't committed to the healing journey at a deep level, there's a part of you that believes you don't deserve it, right? Or you're not perfect enough to get it, or something else. The reasons you believe you're suffering are rarely the real reasons. Remember that, right? Rarely, almost every time. Right? That helped? Good. That's awesome. They range 22 to 5. Great, right? I mean, hey guys, it's 1 p.m. It's 8 a.m. Whatever it is. Let's get together. Let's get our cushions ready beneath our butts. And let's just sit and just focus on one topic, just one idea, right? And just go to town. Walking meditation is great in the home. Sometimes instead of sitting, absolutely. Listening to your body, Deb, that's great. What if you can't consider it? I'm guessing that's concentrate enough to meditate, Wendy. Then I would do it in shorter periods. All right, instead of going into long periods of times and meditating, I would just do it in shorter and shorter periods, number one. Number two, I would use guided meditation sessions rather than look for you to go about it, because when you're guided many times, it can really help with your focus, right? Until you get to a point where you can do it on your own. How to overcome the health anxiety? I tried to ignore symptoms, but every time I had panic attacks, I had new symptoms. I get tired. KTF, when it comes to health anxiety, and guys, what we're doing here is we're really grouping our anxiety disorder all together in these teachings. Let's understand. So what we have to stop doing is going, hey, but I've got this, hey, I've got that, but this is different. It's not different, right? They're all grouped under the same umbrella. And when we understand that, we can start to stop separating the information that we're getting and realizing that it's exactly what we need to hear. But honestly, I would go on the Apple Podcast or whatever directory you have for podcasts. I would look up Health Anxiety Podcast or Health Anxiety Podcast Show. That's a monthly podcast. And I would go through every episode there. right, when it comes to health anxiety. The Calm app, Christopher says, is fantastic for receiving and meditation. Absolutely. This group is on healing and wins. Absolutely. Noreen, I want to this is a bit of a longer question, so let's tackle it real quick. Leslie is here. Let's give it up for our moderator. Moderating and doing a fantastic job in the support group that we have. If you guys aren't part of it, please join, and it's super fun, and we share a lot of wins, and sometimes we do a lot of silly things because that's what life is about. It's about doing silly things. My teenage kid is Steven's here too. Wow, you guys are late. My goodness, that's okay. Better late than never. Let's give it up for Steven. Total inspiration, my friend. Love you, love you, love you. Love you both. Delayed learner, teenage kid. He was a stammer too. He gets bullied and teased a lot in school. I'm tired of complaining in school every other day. He's too immature his age. How can I help him with this daily anxiousness? I hope my question is absolutely not. There's no such thing as as an off topic here, really. I mean, I've never heard of a question that's too far-fetched to answer. Noreen, first things first is, and I don't want anybody to take this stuff personally because everything I say comes from love. Every single thing I say comes from a place of love. And I believe that to heal our kids' anxieties and to heal kind of the energetic energy that's being outputted there that then leads them to being bullied starts with the adult. When the adult starts to find that their anxiety is starting to get better, they feel like they're on a journey of healing. They're caring for themselves. That's the biggest difference that you can make in your child's life, first and foremost. Let's start there. Okay, so the more you prioritize you, self-care, kids are seeing it, kids are responding to it unconsciously, the more they're gonna begin shifting their vibration, let's call it. I believe that kids that get bullied don't get bullied out of some kind of coincidence or accident. I don't think there are any accidents. I don't believe there are any accidents. I believe that some kids and adults are more sensitive to it than others based on some kind of an unconscious communication with other people. So with that said, what's very important to understand is that rather than going about this in a more logical manner with the child, I think it's very important for them, first and foremost, to work on calming their own nervous systems when they get home from school and learning certain breathing techniques while they're at school, because the last thing we want the kids to learn is that they have to go through their entire lives listening to their instincts and simply being guided by their bodily instincts. So calming the nervous system of the child, making sure that the child has 1 to 3 breathing techniques that they bring with them throughout the day, understanding that they don't have to, and to be honest, like I mentioned, when the adult begins taking care of themselves, when the breathing techniques are in place, when the nervous system feels less stimulated, I would take them away from any kind of video games. Okay, very important, any kind of video games. I would take them away from any kind of stimulation, at the very least, limit the time that they're spending with those things. I would put them in naturistic environments more. Take the kid into nature, okay, and let them, what do they call it? Forest bathing? Okay, just go about a 30-minute walk with the trees, with the bushes, with the wind, with all those things, even if they don't really enjoy it at the beginning. So those are the things that I would do, and I bet the answer is a little bit different than what you would have expected to hear. But I would start with that kind of the internal changes, because many times when you make those internal changes, the things in the external world start to shift as well, right? That's what I would recommend. I hope that helps. I wish I had techniques when I was bullied. Pushing them down and soldiering on obviously didn't work. I know. Yeah. Zoe's always got some really cool insight. She's the original warrior, if we can call some of the people here. Realize depersonalization gets worse the more I expose myself to stimulation. Yeah, totally. We have to be very, very aware of where our energies are being invested, right? Because there's a vested interest in the world. A lot of the marketing, a lot of the subliminal messaging and this and that, and the Twitters and everything like that. There's a vested interest in dictating how you think about things, how you think about yourself, how you think about the world. There's a vested interest in you feeling like you have to rely on other people and government in order to survive. And I think that when we become aware of those things and we move away from stimulation and towards a place of inner peace, we can bring others along, right? We can bring others along. And with that said, my friends, we conclude a Facebook Live. We did it! I hope you enjoyed it. I really do. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some insight from it. I hope you were able to understand that you are so loved in this page and in the Anxiety Guys support group. Please join us in the support group. If you need any more information on the Inner Circle program, go to theanxietyguy.com and begin the program if you have the means to, please, because when you win, I win. And I just want you to know that together we're moving forward, and you don't have to do this overnight. You don't have to do this overnight. Just know that by being here, you have taken a tremendous step forward, And for the rest of the day, you don't have to do a tremendous amount of thinking over what happened here. You've already started the process, and you are moving towards a place that you deserve to be. So from Karen, love you, and don't be afraid of love, my friends. Do not be afraid of it. I know that a lot of people will reject your love and reject love as a whole. Just make sure that it starts with you, everybody here, and I hope to see you all soon again. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, guys. Love you all. Bye.